The great throne room of the Kelvari Empire stretched for nearly a mile. Its walls were made of black stone that shimmered like the night sky. Thousands of nobles, warriors, and princes from across the galaxy stood in neat rows, their eyes fixed on the massive throne at the center. Upon it sat Emperor Vorath, ruler of 700 worlds and commander of the largest fleet in known space. But today the mighty emperor looked tired. His purple skin, usually bright with power, seemed dull. His four eyes, which had witnessed the fall of countless enemies, now carried a sadness that no war could heal. Beside his throne stood his only daughter, Princess Yuna. She was beautiful in the way that stars are beautiful, distant and untouchable. Her silver hair flowed down her back like a waterfall of moonlight. Her skin glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed gently like a heartbeat. She kept her hands folded in front of her, and she did not look at the crowd. She had learned long ago that hope only led to disappointment. Emperor Vorath raised his hand, and the entire room fell silent. "You have all come here today because you received my message," he said. His voice was deep and heavy. "My daughter has reached the age of bonding. According to our ancient laws, she must find a mate before her next birthday, or she will be forbidden from ever ruling. The Kelvari bloodline will end with her." Whispers spread through the crowd. Everyone knew about Princess Yuna. Everyone knew about her curse. The Kelvari royal family carried special blood. It gave them great power, the ability to heal wounds, to live for thousands of years, to command energy itself. But this power came with a terrible price. Until a royal found their bonded partner, their life energy was poisoned to any male who came too close. One touch could burn a man from the inside. One kiss could stop his heart forever. The only way to break this curse was through the bonding ritual. If a male could survive 3 ancient trials, he would become immune to the princess's deadly touch. They would be bonded for life, sharing power and living together until the end of time. It sounded like a fairy tale, but the reality was much darker. "I will not lie to you," Emperor Vorath continued. "Many have tried to bond with my daughter. Brave warriors, powerful princes, brilliant scholars." He paused and closed his eyes. "They are all dead." The crowd shifted nervously. Some of the younger nobles glanced toward the doors, already planning their escape. "The trials are difficult," the emperor said. "The first trial tests the body. The suitor must hold my daughter's hand for 60 seconds without dying. Her energy will burn through flesh and bone. It will feel like standing in the heart of a sun." Princess Yuna's hands tightened slightly. She had watched 17 suitors die in that trial alone. She remembered each of their faces. She remembered how they screamed. "The second trial tests the spirit," Vorath went on. "The suitor must face my daughter's guardian beast, Rock. He has protected her since she was a child. He has killed every challenger who dared to fight him. He is faster than light and stronger than steel." Somewhere in the shadows behind the throne, something growled. The sound was low and terrible, like thunder rolling through mountains. Several nobles took steps backward. "The third trial tests the heart. I cannot tell you what it involves. I can only tell you that it has broken every suitor who survived the first 2 trials. They gave up. They ran away. They were found wanting." The emperor stood from his throne. He was tall, nearly 9 feet, and even in his sadness, he commanded respect. He looked out at the crowd with desperate eyes. "I am offering half of my empire to any male who can complete these trials. Half of everything I own. 700 worlds, fleets of ships, wealth beyond counting. All of it will belong to the one who can bond with my daughter." The crowd remained frozen. The offer was beyond generous. It was the kind of offer that started wars. But no one moved. No one spoke. Princess Yuna felt her heart grow cold. She had expected this. She had prepared herself for this. But it still hurt. It always hurt. Emperor Vorath's face twisted with frustration and pain. He had conquered star systems. He had crushed rebellions. He had made kings beg for mercy. But he could not save his own daughter from loneliness. "Is there no one?" he shouted. His voice echoed through the massive hall. "Is there no one in this entire galaxy brave enough to marry my daughter?" Silence. The nobles looked at their feet. The warriors studied the walls. The princes pretended to be invisible. Yuna closed her eyes. She had known this would happen. She was a curse wrapped in beautiful skin. She was a death sentence wearing a crown. No one would ever, I'll do it. The voice was quiet but clear. It came from the very back of the crowd, where the unimportant visitors stood. Everyone turned to look. A young man stepped forward. He was not tall. He was not muscular. He wore simple gray clothes, the uniform of a worker, not a warrior. His black hair was slightly messy, and his brown eyes looked tired, like he had not slept well in many days. He was human. The crowd erupted in laughter. Humans were considered one of the weakest species in the galaxy. They lived short lives, barely 100 years. They had no natural weapons, no special powers, no great technology. They had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. Most species considered them to be children playing in an adult's world. A human, one of the nobles laughed. Is this a joke? He won't last 5 seconds in the first trial, another shouted. Someone remove this fool before he embarrasses himself further. But the human did not move. He did not look at the laughing nobles or the mocking princes. He looked only at the princess. Yuna stared back at him. His eyes were strange. They were not filled with greed or ambition. They were not hungry for power or wealth. Instead, she saw something she had never seen before in a suitor's eyes. She saw kindness. She saw sadness. She saw understanding. It was the look of someone who knew what it felt like to be alone. Emperor Vorath raised his hand, and the laughter stopped. He studied the human with curiosity. What is your name, human? Kang Hyun, the young man answered. His voice was steady. I am an engineer from the mining station on Kepler 7. An engineer, Vorath repeated. Not a soldier, not a prince, not even a diplomat. Just an engineer. Yes. And you wish to attempt the trials, knowing that far greater males than you have died? Hyun nodded slowly. I do. Why? The emperor leaned forward. You cannot possibly want my empire. Your kind barely knows how to travel between stars. What could you possibly hope to gain? Hyun was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at Yuna again. I saw her eyes, he said simply. I saw how alone she is. And I thought, no one should have to feel that alone. No one should have to stand in a room full of people and feel invisible. The throne room went completely silent. Princess Yuna felt something crack inside her chest. It was a feeling she had forgotten long ago. It was hope. Emperor Vorath sat back in his throne and studied the human for a long time. Then slowly, a small smile appeared on his face. Very well, Kang Hyun, he said. The trials begin at dawn. May the stars have mercy on you, because my daughter's curse will not. The crowd slowly left the throne room, but their laughter remained in the air like poison. Kang Hyun stood alone near the great doors, watching the nobles and princes walk past him. Some of them shook their heads in disbelief. Others pointed at him and whispered cruel jokes to their friends. The human thinks he is a hero, one Kelvari lord said loudly. He will be ash before breakfast. Hyun did not respond. He had learned long ago that words could not hurt him. He had survived much worse than insults. A hand grabbed his arm and pulled him into a small side hallway. He spun around and found himself facing a human woman in elegant diplomatic clothes. She was older than him, perhaps in her 40s, with sharp eyes and graying hair pulled back in a tight style. Are you completely insane? She whispered angrily. Do you have any idea what you just did? Hyun recognized her. Her name was Na Ji-won, and she was the human ambassador to the Kelvari Empire. She was the only reason humans were allowed to work in Kelvari space at all. She had spent 20 years building relationships with alien governments. She was smart, careful, and very, very worried. Ambassador Na, Hyun said calmly, it is good to meet you. Good to meet me? Good to meet me? Ji-won looked like she wanted to shake him. You just volunteered to die in front of the entire Kelvari court. Do you understand what this means for our people? Hyun tilted his head. I don't understand. If you fail, when you fail, every species in this room will remember that a human tried to be a hero and got himself killed. They already think we are weak and foolish. You just proved them right. I have not failed yet, Hyun pointed out. Ji-won laughed, but there was no humor in it. Yet, listen to yourself. 17 suitors have died trying to bond with Princess Yuna. 17. And those were not ordinary males. They were warriors who had won 100 battles. They were princes with the best armor and weapons in the galaxy. One of them was a Vraxi. You know the Vraxi? Their skin is made of living metal. He lasted 8 seconds in the first trial. 8 seconds, and he was dust. Hyun listened quietly. He did not argue. And you? Ji-won continued. You are an engineer from a mining station. You fix broken machines and calculate ore values. You have probably never even held a weapon. What makes you think you can survive what they could not? I don't know if I can survive, Hyun admitted, but I had to try. Ji-won stared at him. Why? Why did you have to try? You don't know the princess. You don't want the empire. You have no reason to throw your life away like this. Hyun was quiet for a moment. He looked down at his hands, rough and scarred from years of hard work. Then he spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. I came to this capital because the workers on my station are sick. The Kelvari company that owns the mine does not give us proper air filters, does not give us clean water. 3 workers died last month from lung disease. I came to ask for help. Ji-won's anger faded slightly. I did not know this. No one knows. No one cares. Humans are cheap labor. If we die, they just bring more. Hyun's voice was not bitter. It was simply honest. I stood in that throne room for 3 hours waiting for someone to listen to me. No one did. They looked through me like I was not there. He looked up at the ambassador. And then I saw her, the princess. She was standing right next to the most powerful being in the galaxy, surrounded by thousands of people. But she had the same look in her eyes that I see in my workers' eyes. The look of someone who has given up. The look of someone who believes no one will ever help them. Ji-won said nothing. I know I am not strong, Hyun continued. I know I am not special. But when I saw that look, I could not stay silent. I could not walk away and pretend I did not see. That is not who I am. The ambassador studied him for a long time. The anger had left her face, replaced by something more complicated, something like respect mixed with fear. You are either the bravest human I have ever met, she said finally, or the most foolish. Maybe both, Hyun replied with a small smile. Ji-won sighed and rubbed her temples. The trials begin at dawn. That gives us only a few hours. I cannot stop you from doing this, but I can at least try to help you prepare. You will help me? Someone has to. If you are going to die, you might as well die with some dignity. She began walking down the hallway. Come, I have access to the Imperial Library. There may be records of the previous trials. Maybe we can find something useful. Hyun followed her through the winding corridors of the palace. It was like walking through a maze made of shadows and starlight. The walls were carved with images of ancient Kelvari heroes, their 4 eyes watching every step. They reached the library an hour later. It was a massive room filled with floating crystals that contained information from across the galaxy. Ji-won worked quickly, pulling data from crystal after crystal while Hyun studied the information. The records of the trials were not encouraging. The first trial was exactly as the Emperor described. The suitor had to hold the princess's hand while her deadly energy burned through them. Most died within seconds. The longest anyone had survived was 23 seconds, and that male had spent the rest of his short life without arms. The second trial was even worse. Rak, the guardian beast, was a creature called a Verathorn. He was the size of a small building, covered in scales harder than any metal. He could move faster than the eye could follow. He had claws that could cut through starship armor. Every suitor who faced him had been torn apart. The third trial was a mystery. The records simply said test of the heart with no other details. Those who passed the first 2 trials refused to speak about the third. They only said that they had failed and then left the planet in shame. This is impossible, Ji-won muttered. There is no way to survive this. But Hyun was staring at one particular record. It was old, thousands of years old, and it contained notes from a Kelvari scientist who had studied the princess's curse. Look at this, he said. The deadly energy. It is not actually poison. It is life force. Pure life energy. It kills because other species cannot absorb it. Their bodies reject it, and they burn. So So what if there was a species that could absorb it? A species whose bodies were designed to adapt to anything? Jiwon frowned. What species could do that? Hyun smiled grimly. Humans. Our bodies adapt. We survive diseases that kill other species. We heal from injuries that should be fatal. We adjust to different environments, different foods, different pressures. Our bodies are built to change. That is, that is just a theory. You cannot bet your life on a theory. I have nothing else to bet on, Hyun replied. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the alien stars were beginning to fade as dawn approached. Somewhere in the palace, Princess Yuna was probably also watching the sky, wondering if this strange human would die like all the others. Ambassador, Hyun said quietly, if I die tomorrow, I want you to do something for me. What? Tell my workers on Kepler-7 that I tried. Tell them that someone saw them, that someone cared enough to try. Ji-won felt tears forming in her eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. She was a diplomat. She was not supposed to show emotion. I will tell them, she promised. Hyun nodded. Then he turned away from the window and walked toward the door. Where are you going? Ji-won asked. To sleep, he replied. If I am going to burn tomorrow, I would like to be well rested. And despite everything, despite the fear and the sadness and the impossible odds, Ambassador Na Ji-won found herself laughing. It was a real laugh, filled with surprise and wonder. Humans, she thought, they face death and they make jokes. Maybe, just maybe, this foolish engineer had a chance after all. The chamber of radiance was a perfect circle made of pure white crystal. Light came from everywhere and nowhere at once, making it impossible to see shadows. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. A place built for death, disguised as a temple. Kang Hyun stood at the entrance, wearing the same simple gray clothes he had worn the day before. The Kalvari priest had offered him ceremonial armor, but he had refused. If he was going to survive this, it would not be because of armor. The chamber was filled with witnesses. Emperor Vorath sat on a floating throne, his 4 eyes fixed on the human with curiosity. Hundreds of nobles filled the viewing platforms above, most of them holding drinks and snacks as if they were watching entertainment. Ambassador Na Ji-won stood in the human section, her hands clasped tightly together in silent prayer. And in the center of the chamber stood Princess Yuna. She wore a white dress that made her silver hair seem to glow even brighter. The soft blue light that always surrounded her was stronger now, pulsing like a frightened heartbeat. Her hands were shaking slightly, though she tried to hide it. Hyun walked toward her. With each step, he felt the temperature rise. By the time he was 10 feet away, the air was as hot as a summer day. At 5 feet, it felt like standing next to a fire. At 3 feet, his skin was already starting to redden. One of the Kalvari priests stepped forward. He was ancient, with wrinkled purple skin and clouded eyes. The first trial is simple, the priest announced. The suitor must hold the princess's hand for 60 seconds. If he survives, he passes the trial. If he releases her hand or falls, he fails. If he dies, the priest paused. Well, that is also a failure. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Hyun stopped directly in front of Yuna. They were the same height, and their eyes met for the first time up close. He saw fear in her gaze. Not fear for herself, but fear for him. You do not have to do this, she whispered. Her voice was soft and musical, like wind through silver bells. No one will think less of you if you walk away. I would think less of myself, Hyun replied quietly. Something flickered in Yuna's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or wonder. The priest raised a crystal that would count the seconds. When you are ready, take her hand. The trial begins the moment you touch. Hyun took a deep breath. He thought about his workers on Kepler-7, breathing poisoned air while corporations counted their profits. He thought about Ambassador Na, who had spent 20 years fighting for humans to be seen as equals. He thought about his mother back on Earth, who had worked 3 jobs just to give him a chance at education. Humans had always survived. Against predators and ice ages and wars and diseases, they had survived. Their bodies were not the strongest or the fastest, but they adapted. They endured. They refused to give up. He reached out and took Yuna's hand. The pain hit him like a wave of fire. It was not on his skin. It was inside him, burning through his blood and bones. He heard someone in the crowd gasp. He heard the priest begin counting. 1, 2, 3. Hyun's vision went white. Every nerve in his body screamed at him to let go. The energy was pouring into him like molten metal, trying to tear him apart from the inside. 10, 11, 12. His hand was blistering. He could smell his own skin burning, but he did not let go. He focused on Yuna's eyes, on the shock and hope and fear he saw there. 20, 21, 22. The crowd had gone completely silent. No one was laughing now. They were watching a human do the impossible. 30, 31, 32. Hyun felt something strange happening inside him. The burning was still there, but it was changing. His body was learning the rhythm of Yuna's energy. It was adjusting, adapting, doing what human bodies had done for millions of years. 40, 43, 44. The pain was fading, not gone, but manageable. His burned skin was healing, the blisters closing and smoothing. The energy was still flowing into him, but now his body was accepting it, using it. 50, 51, 52. Yuna stared at him in disbelief. Her hand was trembling in his grip, but not from her power. She was crying. Tears rolled down her glowing cheeks as she watched this strange human refuse to die. 58, 59, 60. The priest's voice cracked on the last number. He looked at the crystal, then at Hyun, then at the crystal again, as if he could not believe what he was seeing. The trial is complete, he announced. The suitor survives. The chamber exploded with noise. Half the crowd was cheering in amazement. The other half was shouting in disbelief. Emperor Vorath leaned forward on his throne, his 4 eyes wide. Hyun slowly released Yuna's hand. His palm was scarred and red, but it was whole. He was alive. How? Yuna whispered. How did you do that? Hyun smiled weakly. His legs felt like water, and he was not sure how much longer he could stay standing. Humans are stubborn, he said. We do not know when to quit. He swayed slightly and Yuna instinctively reached out to steady him. Then she froze, horrified at what she had done. But Hyun did not burn. Her touch was warm, painfully warm, but not deadly, not anymore. Impossible, she breathed. Your Majesty, one of the nobles shouted. This must be some kind of trick. No human could survive the princess's touch. Emperor Vorath stood slowly. The entire room fell silent. I have watched 17 suitors die in this chamber, the emperor said. His voice was heavy with emotion. Warriors and princes who were supposed to be the strongest in the galaxy. They lasted seconds. This human lasted the full minute. He looked at Hyun with something approaching respect. There is no trick here, only strength that we did not expect. Hyun bowed his head slightly. Thank you, Your Majesty, but the first trial is only one of 3. Indeed, the emperor's expression grew serious. The second trial begins in 1 hour. You will face Rak, my daughter's guardian. I suggest you use that time to prepare. The crowd began to leave, buzzing with excited conversation. Ambassador Na ran toward Hyun, tears streaming down her face. You did it, she said, grabbing his shoulders. You actually did it. 1 trial, Hyun reminded her. 2 more to go. But you survived. No one thought you would survive. Hyun looked at his burned hand. The skin was healing quickly, much faster than it should have. Yuna's energy was still inside him, and his body was using it to repair itself. The second trial will be different, he said quietly. I cannot hold a monster's hand for 60 seconds. Then what will you do? Hyun thought about the records he had read in the library. Every suitor had tried to fight Rak with weapons and strength. Every suitor had died. I will try something else, he said finally. Something human. Before Ji-won could ask what he meant, Hyun walked away. He needed to think. He needed to plan. And he needed to find something very specific in the palace gardens. Behind him, Princess Yuna watched him go. Her hand still tingled where he had held it. For the first time in her life, someone had touched her and lived. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to hope. The arena was ancient. Its walls were made of black stone that had been stained darker by centuries of blood. Massive columns rose toward a sky that was always cloudy here, as if the sun itself refused to watch what happened in this place. Kang Hyun stood in the center of the arena, alone. He carried no weapon. He wore no armor. In his pocket was a small bag that he had filled in the palace gardens. That was all. The viewing platforms were even more crowded than before. Word had spread quickly about the human who survived the first trial. Nobles who had not bothered to attend the morning were now fighting for seats. They wanted to see if this strange creature could perform another miracle. Most of them expected to see him die. Emperor Vorath sat on his throne with Princess Yuna beside him. She had not spoken since the first trial ended. She simply stared at the tiny human figure in the arena, her hands gripped together so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Ambassador Na Ji-won was also watching, her face pale with worry. She had tried to convince Hyun to at least carry a weapon, but he had refused. Weapons did not help the others, he had said. I need something else. The ancient priest stepped forward and raised his arms. The second trial tests the spirit, he announced. The suitor must face Rak, guardian of the princess. He must defeat or subdue the beast to prove his worth. The priest paused. The trial ends when one of them can no longer fight. A massive door on the far side of the arena began to open. The sound of grinding stone echoed across the blood-stained sand. And then Rak emerged. The creature was a nightmare made real. He stood 20 feet tall at the shoulder, with a body like a mountain covered in scales of pure black. Each scale was harder than starship armor. His claws were longer than swords. His teeth could bite through steel. His eyes glowed red with ancient fury. But the most terrifying thing about Rak was how he moved. For something so large, he was impossibly fast. He crossed half the arena in the time it took to blink, stopping just a few meters from Hyun. The crowd held its breath. Hyun looked up at the monster. He felt fear. Of course he felt fear. He was human. But he did not run. He did not scream. He simply looked. Rak roared. The sound was so loud that it shook the columns. It was a warning, a threat, a promise of death. Every previous suitor had either attacked or fled when they heard that roar. Hyun sat down. The crowd murmured in confusion. What was the human doing? Was he giving up? Was he so afraid that he could not move? Rak seemed equally confused. He had expected the small creature to fight or run. Instead, it had simply sat down. The beast circled Hyun slowly, growling deep in his chest. Hyun reached into his pocket and pulled out the small bag. From it, he took a piece of dried meat, something he had found in the palace kitchens. He held it out toward Rak. The crowd burst into laughter. He is trying to feed it, someone shouted. Does he think this is a pet? The human has lost his mind. But Hyun ignored them. He kept his hand steady, the meat resting on his open palm. And he did not look directly at Rak. That would be a challenge. Instead, he looked at the ground, making himself as small and unthreatening as possible. Rak stopped circling, his red eyes fixed on the strange creature that showed no fear, no aggression. In thousands of years, no suitor had ever done this. They had all come with weapons and anger. They had all treated him like an enemy to be destroyed. This one was different. Minutes passed. The crowd's laughter faded into confused silence. Hyun remained perfectly still, his hand still extended. His arm was starting to shake from the effort, but he did not move. Finally, Rak took a step forward, then another. His massive head lowered slowly, nostrils flaring as he smelled the offered meat. Then, gently, so gently that it seemed impossible for such a massive creature, he took the meat from Hyun's hand. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Hyun slowly reached into his bag and pulled out another piece. He placed it on the ground in front of him, then scooted backwards slightly, giving Rak space. The beast ate the second piece. Then he lay down. The arena went completely silent. The massive predator, the undefeated guardian who had killed 17 of the galaxy's strongest warriors, was lying on the sand like a tired dog. His red eyes were still watching Hyun, but the anger in them had faded. Hyun began to speak. His voice was soft and calm, barely loud enough to hear. I know you are protecting her, he said. I am not here to hurt her. I am not here to take anything. I just want to help. He slowly extended his hand again, this time empty. He held it in the air, waiting. An hour passed. Then two. The crowd grew restless, but no one left. They could not look away from the impossible scene before them. In the third hour, Rock moved. He pushed himself up slightly, bringing his massive head close to Hyun's extended hand. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the human and the beast. Then Rock pressed his head against Hyun's palm. The crowd exploded. Some were cheering, others were demanding that the trial be declared invalid. Ambassador Na was crying openly, not caring who saw. Emperor Voreth stood, and the noise died away. In 10,000 years of recorded history, he said slowly, no one has ever defeated Rak. He has killed warriors, princes, generals. He has destroyed the strongest armor and the most powerful weapons. The emperor's voice was filled with wonder. But today, a human engineer with no weapons and no armor has done what armies could not. He has earned Rak's respect. He looked at the priest. Is the trial complete? The priest's hands were shaking as he checked his ancient texts. The rules state that the suitor must defeat or subdue the beast. The beast he is subdued. He is calm. He has acknowledged the suitor. Then the second trial is passed. The noise in the arena was deafening. Hyun slowly stood, his legs stiff from sitting for 3 hours. Rak stood too, and for a terrifying moment, everyone thought he might attack. Instead, the beast lowered his head and allowed Hyun to scratch behind his armored ears. Princess Yuna could not breathe. She watched this impossible human, this tiny, stubborn man who had survived her deadly touch and befriended her monstrous guardian. He was nothing like the warriors and princes who had come before. He had no power, no wealth, no army. All he had was patience and kindness. And somehow, that was enough. Hyun looked up at the viewing platform, meeting her eyes across the distance. He smiled, a tired, relieved smile, and gave her a small nod. One more trial to go. As guards led him back to the palace to rest, Rak followed. The massive beast walked beside the tiny human like a loyal dog, ignoring the terrified servants who scattered from their path. Ambassador Na caught up with him in the corridor. How? She demanded. How did you know that would work? I did not know, Hyun admitted, but I had a theory. Rak has protected the princess since she was a child. He loves her, and anyone who loves someone is not a monster. They are just afraid of losing what they love. He looked back at the beast walking behind them. I did not come to fight him. I came to show him that I was not a threat, that I wanted to protect her too. Ji-won shook her head in disbelief. You are either a genius or completely insane. Probably both, Hyun replied with a small laugh. But as they walked deeper into the palace, his smile faded. The third trial was coming, the test of the heart. And unlike the first two trials, he had no idea what to expect. Kang Hyun was led through a maze of dark corridors by two silent priests. They did not speak. They did not look at him. They simply walked, their robes brushing against the cold stone floor. Unlike the first two trials, there was no crowd for this one. No viewing platforms, no cheering or laughter. Whatever happened in the third trial was meant to be private. The priest stopped before a simple wooden door. It looked strange in this palace of crystal and starlight, old and ordinary, like something from an ancient temple. Enter, one of the priests said. The trial will begin when the door closes behind you. Yun took a deep breath. What will I face inside? The truth, the priest replied. Nothing more, nothing less. The door creaked open. Beyond it was only darkness. Hyun stepped through. The door closed behind him, and for a moment he was completely blind. Then slowly lights began to appear. Small floating orbs that illuminated a simple room. Stone walls. Stone floor. No furniture except for two chairs facing each other. In one of the chairs sat Princess Yuna. Hyun's heart jumped. Your Highness, I thought... Sit, she said softly. Her voice was different, colder, more distant. The trial has already begun. He walked forward and sat in the empty chair. Yuna watched him with unreadable eyes. This trial tests the heart, she said. It will reveal your true intentions, your true desires. You cannot lie here, you cannot hide. Hyun nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? Yuna leaned forward. Then tell me, why are you really here? What do you truly want? I already told you. I saw that you were alone. I wanted to help. That is what you said. But is it the truth? Yuna's eyes seemed to glow brighter. You are human. Your kind values power and wealth. The Emperor offered half his empire. 700 worlds. Unlimited resources. Are you saying you do not want any of it? Hyun was quiet for a moment. He could feel something pressing against his mind. Not painful, but insistent. It was as if the room itself was searching through his thoughts. I will not lie, he said finally. When I first heard the Emperor's offer, I thought about what that wealth could do. I thought about my workers on Kepler 7. I thought about how many lives could be saved, how many problems could be solved, with just a small piece of that power. Yuna's expression hardened. So you do want the Empire? No, Hyun shook his head. That thought lasted for about 3 seconds. Then I saw your face. My face? You look so tired, so sad, like you had already given up on ever being happy. Hyun's voice softened. I have seen that look before. On the faces of workers who have been treated like machines for so long that they have forgotten they are people. On the faces of children who have been told so many times that they are worthless that they start to believe it. The pressure on his mind increased. The room was testing his words, searching for lies. It found none. I do not want your empire, Hyun continued. I do not want your wealth. I do not even know if I love you. How could I, when we have barely spoken? All I know is that when I saw you standing there, surrounded by people who only wanted to use you, something inside me broke. Yuna's cold expression was cracking. Why? Why would you care about a stranger? Because everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone deserves to have someone who stays. Hyun looked directly into her eyes. I have spent my whole life being invisible, being too small, too weak, too unimportant to matter. I know what it feels like to stand in a room full of people and feel completely alone. Tears were forming in Yuna's eyes, but she fought them back. The previous suitors, she said, her voice trembling slightly. They all passed the first 2 trials. Some of them were brave. Some of them were strong. But when they sat in that chair, they failed. What happened to them? I offered them everything. The empire, the wealth, eternal life. All they had to do was admit that they did not truly care about me, that they were only here for what they could gain. Yuna's voice broke, and every single one of them admitted it. Hyun understood now. The 3rd trial was not a test of strength or endurance. It was a test of honesty. The suitors who survived the first 2 trials had been given a choice. Admit the truth and take everything, or lie and fail. And they all chose the easy path, he said quietly. They all said they did not care. They all said it was just business. Yuna laughed bitterly. I would have married them anyway. I had no choice. But at least I would have known the truth. At least I would not have lived a lie. The room fell silent. The floating lights flickered gently. I will not lie to you, Hyun said. I do not know if what I feel for you is love. Love is something that grows over time, through shared experiences and trust. We have only known each other for a day. Yuna looked at him with something like surprise. But I know this, he continued. I am not here for your empire. I am not here for power or wealth. I am here because no one else stayed. And everyone deserves someone who stays. The pressure on his mind faded away. The room had searched every corner of his heart and found no deception. Yuna stood slowly. Her cold expression was gone, replaced by something raw and vulnerable. She was not a princess anymore. She was just a young woman who had spent her entire life being treated as a prize to be won. No one has ever said that to me, she whispered. No one has ever meant it. She walked toward him, her steps uncertain. When she reached his chair, she stopped and looked down at him with tears running freely down her cheeks. You really do not want the empire? I really do not. You really just stayed? I stayed? Something broke inside Yuna, some wall that she had built over centuries of loneliness and disappointment. She fell to her knees in front of his chair and sobbed. All the pain she had hidden, all the hope she had buried, came flooding out in a wave of tears. Hyun did not know what to do. He was an engineer, not a prince. He did not know the proper protocols for comforting alien royalty, so he did the only thing he could think of. He knelt down beside her and held her. Yuna stiffened for a moment. She had not been held in centuries. Her power had made her untouchable. But Hyun's arms were warm and steady, and slowly she relaxed into his embrace. They stayed like that for a long time, two lonely people finding comfort in each other's presence. Finally, Yuna pulled back and looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "You passed," she said softly. "You passed the third trial. Because I told the truth? Because you were honest about not knowing? Because you did not pretend to love me to get what you wanted? Because you admitted that love takes time?" She smiled, a real smile, the first one she had shown in longer than she could remember. "That is more than anyone has ever given me." She stood and extended her hand. "Come, we should tell my father. The trials are complete." Hyun took her hand and let her pull him to his feet. Her touch was still warm, but it did not burn. The bond between them was growing stronger. As they walked toward the door together, Hyun realized that he had done something none of the previous suitors had managed. He had passed not by being strong or brave. He had passed by being honest. And somewhere deep in his heart, something new was beginning to bloom. It was not love, not yet, but it was the beginning of something that might become love, given time. And that was enough. The bonding ceremony was held in the Heart of Stars, the most sacred place in the Kelvari Empire. It was a massive chamber built at the center of the palace, where the walls were made of transparent crystal that showed the endless ocean of stars beyond. Light from 1,000 suns poured through the walls, painting everything in shades of gold and silver. 10,000 guests had come to witness the impossible. They filled the viewing galleries and the floating platforms, their voices buzzing with excitement and disbelief. A human, a simple engineer from a mining station, had completed the 3 trials. He had survived the princess's deadly touch, befriended her monstrous guardian, and passed the test of the heart. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Kang Hyun stood at the center of the chamber, wearing ceremonial robes of deep blue that Ambassador Na had somehow found for him. He felt strange in such fancy clothes, like a child playing dress-up. But today was not about him. Today was about something much bigger. The great doors opened, and Princess Yuna entered. She wore a gown of woven starlight that seemed to flow around her like liquid silver. Her hair was arranged with crystals that caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns. She was beautiful in a way that made it hard to breathe. But what Hyun noticed most was her smile. It was small and shy, but it was real. For the first time since he had met her, she looked happy. Emperor Vorath stood at the front of the chamber, his expression unreadable. Beside him were the ancient priests who would conduct the ceremony. Yuna walked slowly toward the center, her steps measured and graceful. When she reached Hyun, she stopped and looked at him with shining eyes. "Are you ready?" she whispered. "I have no idea what I'm doing," he admitted. She laughed softly. "Neither do I. Let us figure it out together." The head priest raised his arms, and the chamber fell silent. "We are gathered here to witness a bond that has not been formed in 10,000 years, he announced. A bond between the blood of Kelvari royalty and an outsider. A bond that will unite 2 hearts, 2 souls, and 2 destinies. He gestured for Hyun and Yuna to join hands. They did, their fingers intertwining naturally, as if they had done this 1,000 times before. The priest began to chant in an ancient language. The words echoed through the chamber, and the light from the stars seemed to pulse in response. Energy began to gather around Yuna, the same deadly energy that had burned Hyun in the first trial. But this time, instead of attacking him, the energy flowed into him gently. It moved through his blood and bones, changing him, strengthening him. And as it did, something flowed back from him to Yuna, his human resilience, his stubborn determination, his capacity for hope. The exchange lasted only a few minutes, but it felt like hours. When it was over, Hyun felt different, stronger, more alive. He could feel Yuna's presence in the back of his mind, not reading her thoughts, but simply aware of her, connected. The priest lowered his arms. The bond is complete. These 2 are now one. What was separated is now joined. What was empty is now full. The chamber erupted in cheers and applause. Ambassador Na was crying again, making no effort to hide it. Even some of the alien nobles who had mocked Hyun were clapping politely, impressed despite themselves. Emperor Vorath stepped forward and placed his hands on both their shoulders. "I admit," he said quietly, so only they could hear, "I did not expect you to survive, human. I thought you were brave but foolish." "I am still foolish," Hyun replied. "Just lucky." Vorath laughed, a genuine laugh that surprised everyone who heard it. "Perhaps, but you have done something that 17 other suitors could not. You made my daughter smile. For that alone, you have my gratitude." He stepped back and addressed the crowd. "Let the celebration begin." The feast that followed was unlike anything Hyun had ever experienced. There was food from 100 different worlds, drinks that changed color as you sipped them, and music that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Nobles who had laughed at him the day before now approached with congratulations and gifts. Hyun stayed close to Yuna, partly because he did not know what else to do, and partly because he simply wanted to be near her. They talked quietly throughout the evening, learning small things about each other. She loved music but had never been allowed to play an instrument. He had a terrible singing voice but loved to try anyway. She had read every book in the palace library. He preferred to build things with his hands. It was the beginning of something real, but not everyone was celebrating. In a dark corner of the feast hall, a group of Kelvari nobles watched with cold eyes. Their leader was Lord Keth, a tall aristocrat with sharp features and an ancient family name. He had been one of the suitors who refused to attempt the trials, and he had assumed that no one would ever succeed. Now a human, a creature from a species that had barely learned to travel between stars, was going to inherit half the empire. It was unacceptable. "We cannot allow this," Keth muttered to his followers. "The Kelvari people will never accept a human as their ruler." "What do you propose?" one of his allies asked. Keth's eyes narrowed. "An accident. A tragedy. These things happen at weddings." The signal came at midnight. The lights in the feast hall flickered and went out. In the darkness, armed soldiers loyal to Keth burst through the doors, their weapons raised. "Nobody move!" Keth shouted, stepping into the center of the hall. "This farce ends now." Emperor Vorath rose from his throne, fury in his eyes. "Keth, what is the meaning of this?" "The meaning is simple, Your Majesty. We will not be ruled by a human. The Empire deserves better than this. This insult to our heritage." Keth pointed at Yun. "Kill him. Kill them both if you must." The soldiers moved toward Hyun and Yuna, who were standing near the center of the hall. Nobles screamed and fled in all directions. Ambassador Na tried to reach them, but was pushed back by the crowd. Yun looked at the approaching soldiers. There were at least 50 of them, all armed with energy weapons. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing but his bare hands. But he was not the same man who had arrived at the palace 2 days ago. He had survived the princess's deadly touch. He had befriended a monster. He had passed the test of the heart. And now, through the bond, Yuna's power flowed through him like fire. When the first soldier reached him, Hyun moved. He was faster than he had ever been before. He ducked under the soldier's weapon, grabbed his arm, and threw him into the next attacker. Yuna raised her hands and bolts of pure energy shot from her palms, stunning soldiers left and right. And then Rak arrived. The beast had been resting in the courtyard when he felt his mistress's fear through their bond. He crashed through the wall of the feast hall like it was made of paper, roaring with terrible fury. The soldiers turned to face this new threat, but they had no chance. Rak tore through them like a storm through leaves. His claws shattered their armor. His tail swept them aside like toys, and all the while Hyun and Yuna fought side by side, their movements perfectly synchronized through their bond. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, Lord Keth knelt in chains before the throne, surrounded by the unconscious bodies of his followers. His face was pale with fear. Emperor Vorath looked down at the traitor with disgust. "You have betrayed your emperor, attacked members of the royal family, and tried to murder my daughter's bonded mate. The punishment for this is death." Keth's eyes widened. "Your Majesty, I was only trying to protect the empire." "Silence!" Vorath's voice shook the walls. "You were protecting your own pride. Nothing more." He turned to Hyun. You fought bravely tonight. You defended my daughter when she was in danger. What punishment would you recommend for this traitor? Everyone expected Hyun to demand execution. It was what any Kelvari would have done. Instead, he shook his head. I do not want his death, Hyun said quietly. Death is too easy. Let him live. Let him spend the rest of his life knowing that a human defeated him. That will be punishment enough. Lord Keth's face twisted with humiliation. Death would have been kinder. Emperor Vorith stared at Hyun for a long moment, then smiled slowly. Very well. Lord Keth will be stripped of his title and sent to a labor colony. He will spend his remaining years thinking about his failure. He looked at his daughter and her human mate with something like pride. Perhaps humans are wiser than we gave them credit for. As the traitors were led away, Yuna took Hyun's hand. Thank you, she whispered, for staying, for fighting, for everything. Hyun smiled tiredly. I told you. I do not know when to quit. She laughed and leaned against his shoulder. Outside the broken wall, the stars were beginning to fade as dawn approached. A new day was beginning. A new era was starting. And nothing would ever be the same. The Kelvari Empire was changing. It was a slow change like a river gradually wearing away its stone, but it was real. And at the center of this change were two people, a princess who had spent centuries alone and a human engineer who had come from nothing. Kang Hyun stood on a balcony high in the imperial palace, watching ships come and go from the spaceport below. Each ship carried new ideas, new people, new possibilities. Some of them were human ships, something that would have been impossible just a year ago. Footsteps approached behind him, and he turned to see Yuna walking toward him. She was dressed simply today, in a flowing white dress without any jewelry or ceremony. She looked happier than he had ever seen her. The council meeting went well, he asked. Better than expected. She joined him at the balcony railing. They approved the new labor laws. All workers in the empire, including humans, will now have the right to clean air, safe conditions, and fair wages. Hyun felt his heart swell with emotion. He thought about his workers on Kepler 7, the ones who had been dying slowly from poisoned air. They would be safe now. They would be treated as people, not as machines. Thank you, he said quietly. I know it was not easy to convince them. Yuna smiled. It was easier than you might think. When the council members saw how you fought during the coup attempt, they started to change their opinions about humans. You showed them that your people are not weak, just different. Different, Hyun repeated. I like that word. Different, not lesser. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the ships fly by. In the 3 months since their bonding, they had grown closer every day. It was not the explosive romance of stories, it was something quieter and deeper. They talked for hours about their pasts, their hopes, their fears. They learned each other's habits and preferences. They built something real, and slowly, surely, what had started as respect had grown into love. Ambassador Na sent a message this morning, Yuna said. The Earth government wants to establish a formal embassy here. They are sending a delegation next month. That is wonderful news. Hyun shook his head in amazement. A year ago, humans were mining ore on the outer planets. Now we are building embassies in the capital of the greatest empire in the galaxy. You change things, Yuna said. One person can change the universe. I did not do anything special. I just refused to give up. Yuna laughed softly and took his hand. Her touch was warm now, comfortable, familiar. The deadly energy that had killed so many suitors was now shared between them, binding them together in ways that neither fully understood. That is exactly what is special about your people, she said. You refuse to give up. No matter how impossible the odds, no matter how hopeless the situation, humans just keep going. Yun thought about human history, about the ice ages and the plagues and the wars, about all the times when their species should have been destroyed, yet somehow survived. He thought about his ancestors, who had crossed oceans in wooden ships and later crossed space in metal ones. Always moving forward, always reaching for something more. Maybe that is our gift, he said. Not strength or speed or special powers, just stubbornness. It is a good gift, Yuna replied. They were interrupted by the sound of heavy footsteps behind them. Rak emerged onto the balcony, his massive form somehow fitting through the doorway. The beast had become Hyun's constant companion since the trials, following him everywhere like an oversized puppy. The palace servants had gotten used to finding the terrifying predator napping in the gardens or begging for treats in the kitchen. Hyun scratched behind Rak's armored ears, and the beast made a rumbling sound of contentment. I still cannot believe you tamed him, Yuna said, watching them. 1,000 warriors tried and failed. I did not tame him. I just showed him that I was not a threat. Hyun smiled. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not fight. Yuna nodded slowly. That is another thing I have learned from you. The Kelvari way has always been to solve problems through force. Conquer, dominate, control. But your way is different. You talk. You listen. You find solutions that benefit everyone. Is that why the council has been listening to my proposals? Partly, but it is also because you earned their respect. You survived trials that killed their best warriors. You defeated a coup with nothing but your bare hands and an angry Verathorn. She squeezed his hand. They may not admit it openly, but they are impressed. A message chime sounded from inside the palace. Yuna sighed. Another meeting. My father wants to discuss trade agreements with the outer colonies. Go, Hyun said. I will be fine here. She paused before leaving. Hyun, I want you to know something. What? When you stepped forward in that throne room, I did not believe you would survive. I had seen so many suitors die. I had given up hope. She looked at him with eyes full of emotion. But you proved me wrong. You proved everyone wrong. And now I cannot imagine my life without you. Hyun felt his throat tighten. I love you, Yuna. It was the first time either of them had said those words out loud. 3 months of growing closer, 3 months of shared meals and quiet conversations and midnight walks through the palace gardens had led to this moment. Yuna's eyes glistened with tears. I love you too. She kissed him softly, then hurried away to her meeting. Hyun watched her go, his heart full of warmth. He turned back to the view. Below him, ships from dozens of worlds came and went. Human merchants trading with Kelvari businesses, alien tourists visiting Earth for the first time, a galaxy that was slowly learning that strength came in many forms. Ambassador Na found him an hour later, a stack of documents in her arms. There you are, she said. I have good news and more good news. Tell me the good news first. She smiled. The workers on Kepler 7 received the new air filters. Their health is already improving, and the company has agreed to pay compensation to the families of those who died. Hyun closed his eyes. It was such a small thing in the grand scheme of the universe. Air filters and money for a few hundred workers. But it was what he had come to the capital for in the first place. It was what he had hoped to achieve before everything changed. And the other good news? The human music program has been approved. We are sending musicians to perform for the Emperor next week, and several Kelvari artists have requested to study human art forms. Na laughed. Can you imagine? A few months ago they thought we were primitives. Now they want to learn our songs. Hyun smiled. Change was happening, not through war or conquest, but through music and art and conversation, through patience and persistence, through being human. That evening he found Yuna on the balcony where they had stood earlier. The stars were out now, filling the sky with endless light. She was staring at them with a peaceful expression. Do you ever regret it? She asked as he joined her. Regret what? Stepping forward that day, entering the trials, changing your entire life for a stranger. Hyun thought about the question. He thought about his small room on the mining station, the endless days of fixing machines and breathing dirty air. He thought about the loneliness that had followed him for years, and he thought about now, about standing in the greatest palace in the galaxy with a woman he loved, about having the power to help people, to change laws, to make the universe a little bit better. No, he said, I do not regret it, not for a second. Yuna leaned into him, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. I was just an engineer from a mining outpost, he said softly. I did not have armies or titles or power. All I had was the choice to stay when everyone else left, and I would make that choice again. Every time. Yuna looked up at him with shining eyes. And I will spend the rest of my life being grateful that you did." Together, they watched the stars turn, a human and a princess, a bond that had never been formed before in all of history. Behind them, Rex settled down to sleep, his massive form a warm presence against the cold night air. The galaxy stretched out before them, vast and full of possibilities. And somehow, against all odds, they had found each other. That was the most human thing of all, finding hope in the most hopeless of places, finding love in the most unlikely of circumstances, and refusing, no matter what, to give up.